See, Claudia's going to discuss the strategic plan, and then as we go through this slideshow, you will see that we are out of most of this presentation. We're just here to support everyone and to help lead them. We do, if you are interested, take nominations for the board. So you can nominate anyone you want. There is, or is going to be on the website, a place for you to nominate board members. There is a process for nomination. We ask that all board members serve on a committee before they join the board so that you can get an understanding of sort of the inner workings of the school. And then there's a nominations committee that will review all the nominations every year. We have a long list of potential candidates, but we determined who we bring onto the board based on the board's needs. Do we need somebody who has marketing experience? Do we need somebody with financial experience? Whatever it is. So at the beginning of the school year, we thought about the next few years. What are we going to need on our board? And then we go into that pool of nominations and sift through to find who might be able to fit that role. And then we vet them. We go through a process of meeting with them, different board members, so that by the time we come to the late spring, usually May, we vote on the new board members. So if you are interested in nominating people, we highly encourage it. And even if you know what, this person I know right now is really, really busy, but if there's any time this person changes careers or takes a break or whatever it is, you need to grab them. They're great. Tell us why, so that we can start the process and to include them. Okay? Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So, for those of you who might be new to our community, let me just take you back a couple of years. In the 17-18 academic year, we spent the entire school year talking to our different constituents. We hired an external consultant who guided us in creating the new strategic plan. The first one that we did was literally a whiteboard session. The school didn't exist, so it was fairly easy to accomplish. By the time we completed our first strategic plan, we had a lot more people that we needed to include in this process. So we met with faculty, with students, with teachers, with former board members, current board members. It was a very long, intense process. It was a fantastic process. You know, the goal was to kind of look at what the community saw as our strengths and what the opportunities were, where we should double down, and where we needed to really invest in improving. So from that, in 2018 came our new strategic plan for the 2018 to 2023 period. And there are 5 pillars of this plan. I'm going to start, as it is on the slide, with permanence. So permanence really relates to having a permanent home. That's why we named it permanence. You know, it kept coming up that in our tenure, we've had several homes. We've had the dog patch, we've had the motor lot, we've had Fell Street, and as the community has grown, we have tried in every campus, and I think done a fantastic job of really respecting what our pedagogy calls for, right? Having environments that are inspiring to the teachers, to the students, and even to the parents who have to spend some time there. But we always wanted a permanent home, and that's really what this campus is about, is an opportunity for us to transform the Mission campus into exactly what our community needs. Second is nurture and grow. Nurture and grow refers to our faculty and our staff, really nurturing the talent that our children benefit from learning every single day. So the goals that you'll see explained later are things like attracting and retaining top talent, nurturing that talent. You know, we're lifelong learners. We all believe that here. And so we need to invest in making sure that the teachers and the staff that's working with our kids are also doing that. Thirdly, heart and mind, and that refers to our curriculum, to our program, to what this is all about. So making sure, again, that we're staying on top of all of the things that work, and constantly reflecting, which is also part of our process, and making improvements as we go along. Community is also very important, more than ever now that we're spread across 3 campuses. And so the goals that you'll see later in the presentation that relate to community relate to things like PALS, our parent association of Scuola, and how they can help us unite, to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is of course very important. So you'll see those goals later. I don't want to give away their presentation. Thrivability is really moving beyond kind of a startup culture to really thinking about evolving the model from a tuition-based revenue model to something completely outside the box. So there will be task forces, there will be communications that will go out. If we're looking for ideas, we welcome them. At the appropriate time when that committee starts working, we'd love to hear your ideas for how we can do that. Again, to follow up on what Sarah said, to sustain the school 25 years from now, not just for the next academic year. So thanks very much.
I think that's going to be a combination of people.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. So, I hope you can see that.
Oh, you have one.
Yeah. Is it working? Yeah. Hello. Maybe someone in the next.
Yeah, it's
Hello. Is it on now? Yeah, should be. Okay. No, I think the style of this presentation is really supposed to show you how we do things at La Scuola every day. I mean, this is an approach to learning. The director of La Scuola, both the regular and the IB, are very collaborative approaches to learning, and I think it's very important that you know that this is also how we work. The board works that way, and our leadership team works that way, and the faculty works that way. This is not a place where people work in silos, and they're like not looking at what the other person next door is doing. The teachers plan together, where we as a leadership team plan together. It's not easy to work this way, and sometimes it's time consuming, and sometimes it's frustrating, but we really do believe that it leads to much better results that in the end will benefit the experience of your children. And so, sorry, no worries, yeah. Okay, so we kind of already touched on this. I mean, if you're here, and actually there's some new parents, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. So maybe you haven't seen this slide right now 10 times. And so, of course, we're a combination of these wonderful things. The Regina pedagogy is really rooted in the work of studying Regina Italy, and it's an approach that is really focused on creativity, innovation, and a focus on learning versus teaching. International baccalaureate speaks for itself, and if you want to know more about it, come to our IB coffee. It's really super fun, and also Darlene will be speaking about that a bit more later. And of course, language immersion is what got us started. I used to sometimes actually describe these three as, the Regina is our heart, and the IB is our head or our mind, and the language immersion is our soul. This is how we started as a school. And I always like to say, and Italian may not seem like the most useful language, it is the most beautiful. Of course, and the closest to Latin, right, Claudia? So if you point in your head, well, not you, your child, your SSAT or SAT test, so these little words are mostly from Latin, or from Greek. So, if we're thinking about the future, I would like to see what will happen this past year. So we're actually in an accreditation year. Last year we did our CAIS full accreditation, and it was a lot of work for those of you that remember. So it's actually California Association of Independent Schools membership, and then we also combined it with WASC, that's the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And so it was a lot of work for faculty, staff, and some of new parents also participated. And we were, as you saw in my update, we got a 7-year period of accreditation. That's truly wonderful. It's the longest that they can give, and it's really a testament to the amazing work that's done here by the faculty and also the leadership team. And then this is an IB accreditation year, so it's almost like when one board member, and he's not here tonight, says, do we really have to do all of these accreditations? And then we just stop. But I really think it's important for us to self-evaluate, to get people from the outside to come and tell us how we do, and I think it's important to continue to do that so that we continue to improve the quality of the work at La Scuola. So last year we achieved NYT candidacy, that's the middle years program of the IB, and this year is going to be an accreditation year for both PYP and NYT. And then of course we are continuing implementing our strategic plan. And for those of you who are new, we are also recognized by the Italian government as a Scuola paritaria. So for the K5, we are recognized by the government of Italy. And as they promised, they also sent us some funds, so which is, we kind of never believed it would happen, but it did. We're very grateful to the current Italian Consul General, who has been extremely supportive and instrumental in obtaining the qualification. And then, of course, as we draft the strategic plan, it's funny to think, I was thinking, I think we had this maybe in year 3 or like the permanent site, and then it just happened. And I mean, many people led to being here today, but I never stop thanking you in public, because the man that really was the catalyst that made it all happen is Jeff Cox sitting here, and so thank you so much for giving us this incredible opportunity. And again, so I already told you what's new. The middle school is here, it's in this space, so we have some of our key 4 teachers that have been here before, so thank you so much guys for coming to visit and coming to see the site for the first time. And we also now have a full SCL team in place, social emotional learning. We have an SCL specialist and a learning specialist at Scuola as well. And we, most importantly, we will graduate our first 8th grade class. So I couldn't have imagined this 12 years ago when I started in wasn't even the doctor, it was in the church, like at the annex of the church, and now we actually have 8th graders going out into the world. So that is actually a very special event for Scuola. So with that, I'm not gonna let give my phone to our division heads, and we're gonna be telling you more about their own program.
Alright, so I'm going to give you some news from DocPatch. So this year we're continuing, spreading the integration of the Reggio and language immersion. Continuous focus on PD to support, the group of faculty. We're still sending teachers to Reggio Emilia. It's such an amazing PD to do it if you are a teacher. We also start doing actually workshops and professional development for educators outside actually United States. So we are planning to have 5 workshops. Last year we had an amazing one with 50 people coming from all over, I would say all over the country. We have people coming from China and from Europe. And also Nora is one of the teachers in DocPatch. She will help him to kind of organize all of these workshops that are mainly based on IB and Reggio, so we're being kind of recognized to delivering a workshop to other educators. Also, we are part of this, we are becoming part of the director group of the ITP. ITP is an Innovative Teacher Project, is an association from the Bay Area. It's collecting pretty much all the Reggio Emilia approach in the Bay Area, but now we are also part of the director group. We have our amazing ID curriculum coordinator in the early years. She's here, Megan Reed. She's been doing an amazing job. Thank you, Megan. New preschool technology coordinator, Alice. We are also expanding some extended care enrichment program. This year we also have piano. That's kind of amazing. Our music program is Vincenzo Muro, that probably you guys remember. He was a teacher he's still a teacher. He was a teacher for many years at the DocPatch. And actually some amazing news that I want to share with all of you. We're going to bring the Piccoli back. So Piccoli will be back to DocPatch. And everybody was waiting for this, so yeah. And we will, I know there is a slide that we will talk about this more in deep, but yeah, this is our news from DocPatch.
So we'll take you a little further ahead into the elementary program, which is our K-4 program at the high school. Actually, I think people are standing in the door. You can come here. I want to share a short story. I was just on the island of Hawaii to see my son who is boarding there. And in the day when they welcome the parents, the head of school says, I have a trick that this game I've played for many years. So look under your chair, and if there is an X, you're gonna get a free APA t-shirt. So everybody's looking under the chair, and then only one person sitting just like where you're sitting, Sarah, finds the X. So it says, you know, the X's are only in the first 2 rows. So now you know for next time. So maybe we should play this game as well in the future. But what I mean is that if you know, you're welcome to come here, and if you want to leave early, we won't leave you. So just come and sit down.
I'll share a little news around Bell Street. First of all, I want to say that every week I pinch myself as I start the week with these student educators. And thank you for coming tonight. In the K-4 program, and actually in the pre-K up and through the 5th grade, we have now an enhanced IB primary years program. So what happens is the IB will go through a primary years program review. It's a 4-year process, and then they'll bring the new enhanced version to educators. And that happened in the last spring. So what we have is 2 years to digest it and understand, you know, what modifications or updates we need to do as in our practice and in our teaching program. This year's the enhanced primary years program is so closely correlated to the Reggio approach. It is incredible. So they're speaking about the changes around and including the environment, having that as a priority, following the children and not necessarily be held to a summative assessment around a particular outcome. So we're going to respond to the children's interest in their inquiry and their questions. A lot around collaboration. So it was a welcome, it was much of a welcome to see these changes. And I had the pleasure to travel with Leticia and Megan, where many educators were pulling their hairs out. They were just astonished. How are we to go about bringing this shift into their primary years program? And they did continue to look at us for our input and advice. So that's a really proud moment for the Scuola. We continue, we're in our 2nd year in teaching the Singapore math curriculum. So that is a 1st through 6th grade, or actually 1st through 8th grade. And so 1st through 5th grade is a primary mathematics. And we also introduce a little bit into the kindergarten. The highlight of Singapore math is that it has this step where the students are understanding the difference between concrete materials and the abstract. And we've written about it, and we'll continue to have a Singapore math night as well to invite you in. The ateliers, we have our gardens and our the music atelier and the garden music and the art, of course. And now the excitement this year, we introduced 0 periods, which we've always done at the school. So that's that morning between 8 and 8:30 when students are doing an elective, often related to music. And this year, for the first time on the K-4, we're having an ensemble, which is the precursor to the ambassador program. So children who are interested in pushing their knowledge and stretching their knowledge around instruments, they're coming in at 8 o'clock to have this ensemble. Physical education, we've just hired a full-time PE teacher. So up until this point, we've worked with an organization called GrowFit, and they've been coming on site and bringing their curriculum, but working as closely as possible with our IB program. Now we have Mark McBee, who brings 25 years of experience in independent school physical education, and he's a great member of our team. Additional updates on our team is we're expanding our music program. So we've have Vanessa Luke, who is teaching preschool. She's now in the elementary campus. So now we have our Vanessa's working with the kindergarten through 3rd grade, and Carla's working with the 2nd through 4th on campus. And here's and a couple other positions in lots of development with Chiara Fornetti, who, in addition to being a grade 1 teacher, she's also the ed tech coordinator and also teaching design and tech in the middle school. Leticia O'Sullivan, she's our primary years IB coordinator, joining Megan and Doug in the as an IB team. As Valentina mentioned, we have a student support team, so we have a full-time learning specialist and a full-time social emotional teacher. A social emotional learning teacher, and they work small groups, large groups, one-on-one, working with parents and giving professional advice to the teachers. I think that's about it.
I was saying something to my colleague in the back of the room, I realized I have a live mic on me. Just a quick word to the parents who are here, because you are here means you are the most invested parents in the school, and it is a big year in IB land for us, for both primary years and the middle years. So I just want to say a quick couple of things about the two programs. The primary years program is transdisciplinary, meaning all of these traditional subjects that we thought of in school happen at the same time, that young people with their teachers do research using all the disciplines together to ask and answer questions. And they work with one homeroom teacher primarily, or a homeroom teaching team. So there's really a center to the learning. There's central inquiries, 6 inquiries through the year. And that the teachers are working collaboratively around those inquiries. When we go to the middle school, to the MYP, Middle Years Program, we reorganize learning around disciplines, so we can go deeper into each discipline. And there are 8 subjects in the IB wheel, but we continue to do inquiry-based learning. It's really driving at deep questions that are factual and conceptual and debatable. And that these things are totally aligned going forward, but there is some kind of shift there. So, say that to any IB person. We're going to have IB people walking through our school repeatedly for the next 10 months. The main middle school accomplishment of last year, the 2018-19 school year, was just implementing the IB middle years programs, moving from that transdisciplinary learning in PYP to disciplinary learning over at Bell Street. So we were still in the same building, still in the same room, but it was a really big year for us, because elements of that implementation included reorganizing learning by subjects, training teachers and students in this criterion reference assessment, adopting a very different marking and grading system, and of course writing new units of curriculum, because we're the pioneer class is doing this for the first time every year, so we're writing the curriculum as we move through. This year, because you're here, you know, we opened a new campus, and we more than doubled the number of students in the middle years program. So we're experiencing tremendous growth in the middle school and trying to manage that. Also, half of our full-time mission teaching team is new to La Scuola. So at both the student level and the adult level, there's really major work to do in terms of organizational culture formation. So to me, this is the main activity of the year. But it's also a year of really significant milestones in the life of the school. And those include, this fall, we have our first high school admissions cohort, and that's just a really big process for students and for their families and for us as a school. In the winter, we will do our first middle years program community project, which you could think of as kind of the parallel to the exhibition in PYP. But it's service learning focused. Students will think about a social or community issue that they want to engage on and go through that cycle of inquiry and design to respond to that and report back in a pretty public way to all of us. In the spring, we do our first school learning experience in Italy. So grades 7 and 8 will As part of a unit of inquiry, travel to Italy and engage in learning for a couple of weeks. There will be a 6-week unit of inquiry, a couple of weeks of which will be in the Republic of Italy. In the summer, of course, coming up this summer, I think of it as summer, we'll have our first middle school graduation. That's not just a 90-minute event. There's a lot of stuff leading up to that. So it's a big activity for us to plan this year. We continue to work on our accelerated schedule for MYP full accreditation. In a couple of weeks, we'll have our MYP consultant visit the campus for 2 days to meet with us individually about where we are in the process. She will write a report back to the headquarters, and we will apply for full authorization about 2 months after they receive that report, and then they will send a team out to us sometime in the spring, and we should hear back late spring or summer on what they think of us and what we need to do to keep going. I mean, my expectation is that we're likely to be accredited, and we're likely to have a long to-do list, which is what we should expect as a startup middle school. Well, there's things to do, and so, as Valentina said earlier, that we welcome the accreditation because it's really this process by which we focus and prioritize the growth of the school at the pedagogical level. I've got some bubbles up here. I want to speak to those quickly. One of the questions we're asking and answering this year is, what does it mean to be a Reggio Emilia middle school? There is no Reggio middle school in the world, except for this one, I think.
No, and actually, when I went to Reggio, I think it was last summer, and we have a very close relationship with Reggio Emilia. We Reggio Children, an organization that really runs the Reggio Emilia pedagogy around the world. And I asked Claudio Giudici, the president, who is also a friend, like, okay, now we are ready for a middle school. So what do we do? And she's having coffee, and she said, well, I'm waiting for you to tell me. I was like, okay, great. So I came back and I started to reflect with that. So it's really a unique process. And Claudia will actually visit us. She was supposed to be here this week, but there was some political drama in Italy, so she's going to come and as a guest. And so it's really like a very active and engaged process. And I think you should mention that.
I will.
Oh, is there? It's in the book. Okay, so he will mention it.
Actually, I just want to say I really like that challenge because if no one else is doing it, we can't do it wrong. What are you talking about? A way that we are moving forward on that, just really, Reggio is this very, very powerful approach to learning, primarily aiming at preschool children. But if you read their documentation, it's really rich in commitment to citizenship and democracy and the rights of children and this aesthetic commitment, this commitment to culture. And so what we have done in the middle school, we put an atelier on democracy and culture into the weekly schedule, and we just bring students into a room and say, go for it. As I was saying to the elementary families this morning, it was extraordinary for me, for the students who have been here a long time, they immediately knew what to do with that time. Oh yeah, good, thank you. You give us some space to do what we need to do. And one group of students started rehearsing some new music. Another group of students decided to do this oral history and photography project. Another group started planning a sports tournament for lunch and recess. And actually it was only the newest students who were thinking, oh, this is like study hall, should I be doing my homework? And then they were sort of wising up to it. I have to say, in full candor, I know we're being recorded, but I was so proud of them this morning, I said that, and I came back to Atelier this morning, this afternoon, and they weren't totally on task. But actually they started telling each other jokes, so there is a teaching role. I was like, wait a minute, okay, comedy is something. Where are you going to do this? telling jokes has to do with timing, has to do with, there's so much ethical content in jokes. What kind of a joke is appropriate? Who are you going to tell it to? Is this falling into the tour? Do we have a comedy stop at the middle school tour? I think we do. We'll see. And that's Reggio, and I know because I'm a Reggio Emilia middle school principal. And if you don't like it, you bring me your Reggio. Sally really graciously, as we grew the middle school, worked with another independent school, which was called Marin Prep and is now called Spanish Infusion. So we have had some middle school athletics, but we were really kind of joining their teams. This is the first year that we have a Scuola middle school volleyball team, and we welcomed some players from the other school. And so I am committed, and I think the students are enthusiastic around. We're gonna have a full year of middle school sports. And it's been wonderful to see. I mean, to see the growth game after game is great. It's about sportsmanship and teamwork and having fun, and they're doing all of that. So I'm really happy about that. And it really is also coming out of Mark McBee, our ex-pro athlete, pro PE teacher, who's coming over on the afternoons to coach with us. And so we also, as Sally said, this is the first year that we're bringing physical education and health into the curriculum. The middle years program has a really rich PE curriculum that looks at things like aesthetics, international sports. We're going to be doing a unit with OGC, the dance company, the dance school across the street, just pilot that. We're looking at learning handball so we can connect with a sport which is very important to the Italians, if you recall the Olympics. This year, for the first year, we have a formal advisory program. So we continue to do morning assembly, but we have a weekly advisory schedule and grade level advisors, and we're building out that curriculum to really formally address a range of social emotional learning needs of students. That's what's going on in the university.
Gerald again. I want to start by saying that I have one word in mind, and it starts with the letter S. Just keep that in mind for now. Then I go to my presentation. This is a very nice picture. Why is it nice? Because it's growing. And we'd rather that it looks this way than the other way, of course. The school has been growing, and more than the tuition, the total revenue, which includes the fundraisers, we actually look at net tuition revenue. Net tuition revenue is the gross tuition, is what we charge you, and then we deduct the discounts, which is what we now call the sliding scale tuition, and other discounts, so there is a net. So that is more important to look at because the other is an expense, and so that is what we have net. And it's good that the net tuition revenue has been on average growing at 19%. It's good to think about that. Fundraising increases have been steady at 22%. So why do we need fundraising? Because the cost this past year to educate one student is $35,100. All right? the tuition on average that we get per student is 32,100. So there is a gap that we call between the two numbers. So keep that in mind. That is a common term used by independent schools, the gap. It's like in London, mind the gap. We always mind the gap. All right? We don't want that 3,000 to become 4,000. All right? So that gap is funded basically by our fundraising. Okay.
Next slide.
Next slide. The expenses. What we want to see here is a slope that is slower in growth and the revenue has a higher growth because we'd like to continue to be financially sustainable. You can see the largest amount of expense is on people expense. That is our biggest expense. Any service industry will have salaries and wages. And for the school, it's been hovering around 60–61%. So if you just look at the school's expenses, you'd like to focus on people cost. So that is teachers, non-faculty, administrators, and like to say, oh, that's the biggest cost. Let's try to bring them down. But there's a tug of war here because we want to focus on attracting the best talent, the best teachers. That's what we want to do. And so how do you fund that? Then we look at, where's our biggest revenue coming from? It's in tuition. So teacher cost, tuition revenue, it's a tough balancing act to do during the year, and as we plan for the following year, and as we plan for the next 10 years. To attract and retain our talent, we make sure we have at least 2% of salaries and wages that we allocate for professional development. Now, operating expenses have been growing at the rate of 19%. And what we'd like to do is try to make the trend slow down and the revenue trend go up. If you look at the revenue trend, if the growth is slope is steeper, then I'd like to think, looks like a stairway to heaven. So maybe in the future we feel like heaven. Okay, so
I
yes.
just wanted to point out there is one expense that has been growing steadily, which is something we're actually very happy about.
Right, and
Yes, and that is that blue section on the top, and that is actually our slide scale tuition or for financial aid. So this is something that, has always been very important to Scuola and Scuola's board, and we really started to do that from very, very early days, where we really couldn't even afford it. But I think it's something that is who we are. And so we're now, I can't really remember, but I know from my voice, it's 11%. If you 11% of the total, you should know that, we will talk about it later, there's different allocation in preschool and there is in K8. But it's really a very, very high number of our families that are on the sliding scale tuition. And I think it's something this is one expense that, we're pleased with that growth, and as Shannon with that, it is also supported by fundraising.
so on average, the past year, let me tell you that the growth of the sliding scale tuition support has grown by close to 100%. So in other words, every year we doubled it. 5 years ago, we started with close to $87,000. Following year, it became $160-something thousand. 2 years ago, $300-something thousand. Last year, close to $700,000. And this year, we allocated $1.2 million. And if you look at the fundraiser In the past years, the fundraiser we raised enough funds.
And Gerald, I'm gonna stop you because then you're gonna steal Shannon's. You finish your sentence. She's going next.
We were able to fund sliding scale tuition from fundraisers, but this year it's the sliding scale tuition support has overtaken what we are raising. So, going back to the capital S, I leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. This is Dunya.
The slide actually looks much better.
I know.
This did look good, actually,
did.
before you saw it. It's a chart really that shows the growth of La Scuola. Thank you, guys. So I started in admissions, I think this is my 8th year now, and we've pretty much tripled in size. This is in a period of 12 years, this is 8 years in admissions, and it's really phenomenal to me. But it's not just about numbers. I mean, obviously we need this for to be sustainable and responsible, but this is about building a community of students and families and faculty and staff that is thriving. And we are now across 3 campuses, and it's reflected in those numbers as well. What you can see is that the part that is growing the most is the elementary and the middle school, moving to 2 sections per grade. Now we have 2 sections in kindergarten and first grade, and we're going to continue to have 2 sections, which allows more students to attend La Scuola. And I just wanted to say before Shannon comes on that parents hear about us through other parents. Most of what drives marketing is word of mouth. It's hearing from you, hearing about your experience. So for everybody that's here tonight, if I can ask you one thing is tell your friends about La Scuola. We have flyers here. We have some really beautiful collateral and brochures. And then if you could write a review for us, that would be fantastic. And I would love for this to be very authentic and very real. When your child comes home and says, I just did this today in the garden, or this is what we had for lunch, whatever it is that is unique and reflects their experience, share it with other people. They want to know. And this is the only marketing that counts and that people really want to hear and listen to. So I would love for you all to go home and write one review. Who's going to write a review tonight? One, two, a few more. Thank you.
Everything in me wants to not be up here because I think we're doing that thing that we say at schools we don't want to do anymore, is like talk at you and not do this. So my tendency is want to walk up and down. So if anybody needs to take a stretch while I'm talking for my 2 minutes, feel free. Also, go Llamas, to Doug's point. We do now have a volleyball team. As one who attended the last volleyball, so for those of you who have teeny tinies or if you're at Bell Street and you start thinking about what does this look for my students as they are approaching high school years, it's a real school with the external pieces as well. It was really a beautiful event. At snack time, the kids said, "We're gonna win tonight," and they won one set, and it was awesome. And they lost the rest of it, and it wasn't as awesome. It was like, go Llamas, and that really goes to the relationships at the center of this slide. And for those of you, I think most people in this room have kind of heard my song and dance. So if somebody else wants to get up and do it, I will gleefully turn this over. But the relationships at the core of being strategic and just harnessing that support. We have all of the greatest supporters actually in this room. I think I see 2 new faces that I haven't already interacted with, whether it's faculty, staff. Some people know that if you speak up and ask me a question, you might get wrangled into a little bit more of a leadership role in volunteering, and I'm gonna thank Josh Mulu right now for chairing the annual fund with us this year. Because that's the kind of support that happens when you keep coming to these things. You say, oh, what does the school need? So when we're thinking about these 3 things, it's working with the board, it's working with pals, people who continue to come to these meetings during the nighttime, hosting events in your home, which at most schools, when you think about the core of support and community, like it's, there's an event on Saturday night. And that was the finest event that I have attended at a parent home after 19 years in education, which Gerald made me write in the report the other day, so, I feel old. It's fine, but that was excellent, thank you. And then we're gonna just move on to a little bit of reporting, I think. For a school of this size and a school this age, the fundraising and the financial support that you all have provided is not something that I can necessarily better in terms of what Annual Fund and the Dolce Vita do. We can continue to move it forward and continue to educate about what philanthropy means at the school. To Gerald's point of that 10%, those of you who have heard me speak before, philanthropy is woven into the schools intentionally. Independent schools were built this way from the day of Ben Franklin, similar to the churches. It's because we want your students and your kids to also understand that this is a piece. I worked with the middle school students. I joined one of Doug's classes 2 weeks ago. We have a group of students led by Kiara who want to be part of the thanking and acknowledging our parents who are supporting the school. So we'll be taking some snack time together so they start to see what that looks like and what your support has done, which brings them to this building and builds in the middle school. So when we look at last year's fundraising results, we hit $525,000. Actually, it's a little bit higher than that, I believe, in actuals. In annual giving for a school of 300 students, it's incredible. 96% parent participation is something that schools who have been in existence for years, really, it's something that they strive for, and this is something that you're all part of. The Dolce Vita, people who have sat down and had one-on-ones with me, I'm also very transparent. I think, oh man, events are not my jam. I have said that in a lot of meetings. Strategic planning, that's something that I can do well. This party I cannot wait for. Last year's chairs came together last week. We celebrated the accomplishments of last year of the $270,000 plus that were raised. That is really where that funded need and the sliding scale tuition comes to fruition for the school. So thank you to those of you who participate in that. And I think that there's more. Yes. And that's basically where all of this comes from. Gerald, was the S that you were going for Shannon? No. All right. Thank you all for coming. I think that we have a next. To nurture and grow. Yay, go Danny.
Hi everyone. So this is, we talk often about how the school is growing in so many ways and enrollment, and this is kind of a fun slide to look at and see how our team has grown over the past few years. You can see it's all, mostly up in the right direction, as Gerald calls it. And in that team, our commitment is really to continue with the professional development, really invest in our teachers, our faculty and staff, and create a method for them to be listened to and give us feedback and really, invest in, we've got a task force to get their feedback and hear about opportunities that will really help them nurture and foster their growth. Sliding. So here you can see, we continue to offer compensation packages to our teachers that are competitive with SFUSD and other of our independent school peers.
we really focus on attracting and retaining the best talent, and you can see that it's evident when we look around the room here. The PD opportunities, like Betty mentioned, going into Italy, they're really unique, and again, just getting feedback from the teachers on what's going to spur their growth and really listening. And creating a mentorship program to support a large number of the new faculty members. This year, I think we welcomed 20 new faculty members to the team, which I think was one of our biggest so far, and it was a really big and wonderful time to welcome all of the team to La Scuola. Mama, I think I'm going to hand over. Mama, go.
Okay. Okay, so a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our motto is open to the world. We want to be as welcoming, as open as we can, and as accessible to as many families and students who will benefit from our education. So there's been a real commitment, Valentina mentioned, from the board in terms of sliding scale tuition, and I think we're not the biggest school, and yet we have proportionally one of the biggest budgets around that, I think. In terms of our tuition income, I think we're good. And I think we can support many families. There's always more need, but I think we're going pretty strong. You can see at Will School it's about 27%. For kindergarten and above, it's 34%. When students and families are committed long-term, the level of sliding scale tuition also goes up. So then we have 34 languages, that's up from 32 last year. The ethnicity, race ethnicity number also is up to 37. Last year we were about 31, 32. And zip codes is just representation from as many different neighborhoods as we can have. And people do come and travel to La Scuola. I think it speaks for our unique curriculum that they're willing to do that. For the sexual orientation is around 3%. That's been around 3 to 4% pretty steadily. And I think all the other numbers are growing. But these are just statistics. I think it's important to remember that diversity is really, it's about values. It's about values we have at the school, and Mama's going to talk more about that.
All right. So in typical La Scuola fashion, last year, as we were thinking about the strategic plan and we were going to set our goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion, we embarked on some research because that's what we do at La Scuola. So we actually did a climate survey, which actually had amazing response rate, and we learned a lot. But also, we wanted to do some qualitative research, so we met with many of you to try to actually dig deeper and understand some insights and where you see the strengths and the areas to focus on. And we actually shared those results and the summary from the qualitative survey with everyone, and I'm happy to share it with somebody, any of the new parents would like to see that, or the new members of the community. I just wanted to touch on, this is what really fed into all of these goals, and these goals are not in any priority order. Basically, out of that research, we figured out that we really needed to focus on DEI training. And one of the things actually that our amazing faculty and administration did this summer in August was to actually go through a half a day of training with Allison Park on DEI, and we're planning to actually do that as well with the board. But another thing that we have heard through that communication with all of you, with the parents, is that some of the parents actually have some hard time sometimes having these hard conversations. So one of the things that we've been thinking about is actually having also community events to bring some people to talk through that. The second one is really around the curriculum. So, again, within the curriculum, there are many examples across the different classes where there is a lot of focus on equity and social justice. But, one of the things that we've identified is that there's really a need to have consistency across the grades, and really bringing all the teachers together to think through that and help each other and look for opportunities where we can actually weave that more consistently into the curriculum. And Melina actually has taken on the role to coordinate all of that. The third one is really, around more transparency. So having, the other thing that we've realized is that while, there are a lot of things that were already happening, not many people were actually aware of what's going on. So one of the things that we decided to actually focus on this year as well is to actually improve the communication, put that on the website, put that in, the beloved Valentina that we all read, and just kind of bring much more insight into that. And also think about how do we connect much more deeply to the community, the broader community as a whole, right? So one of the things actually, we had a meeting recently with the Friends School to try to kind of learn from their experience in the mission. And one of the programs that you mentioned, which actually really was quite interesting, is the Horizon program. And that's actually a program that's focused on low achieving students and to actually do a summer program. So what really was quite interesting there is to actually think about how could we actually make a difference, not necessarily just in thinking about how do we attract students into the school, but how do we make a difference in that community and partner with other schools so that we can actually make an impact, right? So it's not just a single thing. We also clearly care about diversity representation, and one of the things actually that showed up in the survey was specifically a need to focus more on ethnic diversity and socioeconomic diversity. And there, some of the areas that we've been thinking about, at every level, right? So how do we think about that when we're actually doing hiring, and how do we look for other sources of trying to actually source that hiring, thinking more organically about things that actually make sense within the mission, right? So thinking with more focus on attracting more Hispanic families, but also from a socioeconomic diversity perspective. The SMART program, which is a program that's actually focused on lower income students, that is, today we do have actually kids in our school from that program, but actually taking a commitment to support 2 new students a year. And then finally, inclusion by far is one of the things that always scores amazingly on all of our surveys, and it showed up the same on the climate survey. But actually, again, digging deeper, one of the things, for example, that showed up is single family, single parent support, right? So one of the things that actually one of our parents in the preschool, Valentina, did over the summers, did actually her own research with many of going to many of the parents, the single parents, trying to understand what are their unique needs, right? And what can we actually put together from a support perspective to actually enable that. And we're actually working through some really good and interesting and actually good recommendations. That's about it.
So in June of last year, or this year, hopefully many of you filled out the parent satisfaction survey. Some of the striking things are that 95% are satisfied or very satisfied with La Scuola, which is a huge compliment, I think, to us and the work that everyone does here. 70% find out about La Scuola through word of mouth. Coming to what Junior was saying, how important it is that we're all brand ambassadors for La Scuola, and every person that we touch in kind of every aspect of our lives and network is really so very important. As far as themes that are important to our families, as it is to our teachers, the Reggio, the IB, and the language immersion, continues to be a huge draw for families. There are a few responses, there really are the most important themes, especially the language immersion, to the program. And of course, the quality of our teachers is always bringing families here. It continues to be one of the most very important reasons that families are here at La Scuola. You can see that there's a little word cloud that show where the results kind of lay out, and language immersion really is along with teachers, is really rises to the top. Another thing, actually, that comes out in these surveys is how important safety and security at La Scuola is. And I know many of you have probably seen this before, but there's a lot of work going on in the background in terms of creating a safe and secure environment for all of our children and staff here. We have a new emergency services consultant on board who, if you'd like to come to the November 5th Parent Education Series, we'll be here to talk about some things that we do here. Staff development and training is always going on, whether it's CPR training, moulage training. We have a full suite of drills that we do throughout the year. So every month there are new opportunities, whether it's fire, earthquake, lockdown, shelter in place, all of the kind of the standard drills. We really show a big effort across all 3 campuses to create a unique program there. We have a new emergency notification system, which is Titan. It was interesting with all the power outages, trying to figure out exactly our methods of communication, and that is actually one we're happy that is in place right now, because you guys will all receive kind of text messages to the numbers we have on file, should we need to get a hold of you. The morning coffees are a great place. They've already begun. I think we had our first one last week, I believe it was. And the Parent Education Series, again, the safety and security is one of many that will happen over the course of the year. One thing that we're working on now are staff badges and a visitor ID system to be coming soon, hopefully in the next coming months. One thing from the parent survey that we would love for you guys to stay involved. So participating, whether that means filling out the survey, attending school events, whether it's curriculum night, back to school evenings, volunteering in classes, joining a committee, wherever you can show up and participate is really valued from our side. Sharing your feedback, questions, and thoughts. We always are here to listen. And again, to Valentina said, just sharing, engaging and supporting our social media efforts, being the La Scuola ambassador and sharing your experience wherever you can, something that is really important for us.
And now I think I just want on that note to remind everyone how many of you and your fellow parents serve on committees and how much work is done at La Scuola committees, board committees, and other committees. So, thank you for you who already do that, but also it's an encouragement that you're also going to get from us. I have a feeling, to volunteer in something that you're interested in. And everybody is, all of us, and if you're busy, if you're working there, there's always something you can do. And so I just want to encourage you to participate in the school life, because I think it's very rewarding as a parent.
And I think now we actually hand over to Heather and Bridge from Palace. I can talk a little bit that way.
Hi, I'm Heather Dolan. This
She doesn't need get over here.
I'm Bridget has a son in first grade at the Fell Street campus and a preschooler in Gandhi, and this is my 6th year here. I'm Heather Dolan. I have a 2nd grader at the Fell Street campus, and I'm an DCE at the pre-K campus, obviously. And this is our 2nd year as co-chair for the Parents Association, and our mission, paraphrased here, is essentially to engage all of you and support our teachers on this journey to inspire our brave learners that will shape the future. So there's a couple ways we do that. First and foremost, we support our teachers, and we do that primarily through room parents who help organize all of you. We try to build community amongst our classes, across the classes, and now that we are larger and spread across 3 campuses, across all of our various locations. And we're, our community, the children range from 2 to 14 now. So we have these types of connections to make too. We run the La Scuola Mercado, which means we order merchandise, we deliver merchandise, and we have an online store now.
Which we'd love to have the middle school do sometime soon.
Or maybe some other schools.
I hope.
And then we represent the parent body with the administration and the school board. And so our kind of goal for the last year and this year is to make sure that PALS, right, we have this bigger age range, these 3 campuses, more families, more students, that we're sort of preparing PALS to have processes and everything is in place to sort of accommodate this geographically distributed growing community, so that you can get involved, so that you know how to get involved. And the way we achieve our goals is mostly through events. One of the ways we're trying to connect with communities last year, we adopted Constella, which is the parent communication platform, and that's across all campuses, across all ages. And then we have a number of events. This is sort of a summary of everything that PALS supports or kind of hosts or sponsors. And a big thing that we'd like to try and do this year, because we have these bigger age ranges and these multiple campuses, is to support more interest-based activities, so that we're bringing people together around Italian language or food or hiking, and we're sort of building that out. But thank you to all the parents who answered the survey over the summer to talk about interests and how you'd like to get involved.
And if it's not in a survey and you don't see us around, please email us and know that we are approachable and we want to hear from you and honestly hear from you, not just little bits and bobs. Please tell us what you really think, and it will get addressed. We really want to make it work.
And I think we have this unique opportunity at Scuola to engage with the students in their learning in a way that doesn't exist at every school, right? Because the way they're going to learn something or approach a problem is going to change, and there's all this expertise in our community. So, we'd love to have your help and support there too. I don't know.
Everybody has been waiting for it, so thanks so much, Jeff, for being up here. This is really like a conceptual map of the long-term project. As Sarah shared at the beginning of this presentation, the board is focused on the future, and obviously this is the future. This was presented actually, this is all of the images you're going to see now are taken from a much longer presentation that was given by our architects, and some of you were at that presentation, so thank you for coming. We're just going to show you some of the images that really represents the work that's going to happen. In the middle there you see really the idea of the Reggio School and what the school has always been, so learning that starts in obviously homeroom classrooms where the students are younger, and then it moves on to an atelier-focused and centered school. And as the students get into the middle school, they will be traveling and moving to the different areas. As you can see, there are 3 buildings there, because this is what this campus is going to be made of. And St. Charles is the building you're standing in now. San Carlos is down the road of Nest, and it's called the San Carlos Hall. It will be the future of the middle school, all the middle schools. And then there's a new building there, the mystery building. So this is just conceptual design that we submitted actually to the planning department, and it's a proposal of that this is the future of the future of Scuola building. Do you want to add something to that, Jeff?
I think people understand we're doing this in phases, and it depends on how the fundraising goes. But phase 0 is what we completed this summer, and Lisa and I already worked all summer to get St. Charles ready for the students to occupy. We did seismic strengthening, which is of course super important, plus cosmetic changes. You can see the fresh paint, the floors, the building's in great shape for the kids now. That was phase 0. Phase 1 is going to be San Carlos being completely redone. So we'll have the gymnasium, the auditorium, and I think we have a slide of what the upstairs classrooms are going to look like in St. Carlos, because this is, so the plan here is, we've submitted plans to the planning department for all 3 buildings for the entire campus. We're hoping to start demolition on San Carlos next August. And then we hope that we can occupy for January the following school. Now, a year and a half afterwards, 18 months afterwards, we'd occupy that for the middle school. So that's phase 2. So this is let's go back to the classrooms. Just so you yeah, stop there, okay. So that's going to be the second floor above the gymnasium of San Carlos. We've got it set up for 6 classrooms. That's where the middle school is going to go when that's completed, hopefully in January of the 21-22 school year. And then when we get on to the other phases, phase 2 will be the new building. We're not sure when we're going to start that. One thing I forgot is as part of phase 1, we need to add an elevator to this building, and depending on how things work out with our contractor, we may do a lift and add the 18 inches to the first floor here. So that's all phase 1. And phase 2 will be the new building, and we're not sure when that's going to start, but we've got plans, and depending on fundraising, we could be starting that. And then the phase 3 will be the complete renovation of this building, including teacher's lounge on the mezzanine level that's above this floor. Above this floor, there's a floor with 14-foot ceilings.
About this, yeah.
You know, someday we'll make a tremendous teacher's lounge.
Thank you. So actually, this building is quite extraordinary, and I mean, I know for all of us Italians, it's still fairly recent. It's 1887, but for San Francisco, it's pretty old. And so there's actually a beautiful ceiling above this ceiling with still original frescoes from the church, because this used to be a church before they built the church of the corner. And so, you know, that beautiful development. So we're so excited to bring this back to life. But as you can see, I mean, if you want, I mean, we probably can at some point share the full presentation from the architects with the board permission. We'll see what they say. But I think if you want to see it, just, you know, contact us, and me or Shannon, and we'll be happy to share more images with you. And this new building is the one where most of the ateliers will be built. It will also have a full kitchen and a full atelier, and it's going to be a pretty spectacular building. It's also going to be connected to the outside. Any questions on this? So the dog patch, you know, as Fede was saying, we do understand that was we decided to for political class. It was, you know, something that really you know, our community has been mourning ever since, and so there's been some talking, you know, from Fede and doing about bringing the people back. So where would it be possible probably to have the 2 full piccolo classes that we had in the past? We, you know, Fede and a wonderful team. Maybe able to cope with 1 piccolo class. And so we're working with our Italian architect to see how to best do that in our Dog Patch campus. And so we're really hopeful that we can make that happen sooner than later, so we can also continue to invest in our preschool campus. That is, you know, is where everything started, and it's a program that we truly value. Don't have anything to add? Okay? And I think this question and answers. Thank you. So I think we did exactly what Shannon was saying. We just talked at you for so long. You just want to go out and have dinner. It's not about homework, right?
Well, thank you all, everybody, for the presentations. They've been absolutely fantastic, hearing about all the changes that have taken place and all of the ones that are still expected to come. It makes me wonder, what is the anticipated or desired growth rate for teachers and students over the next few years? Because I imagine going from a small school to a larger school to even larger, while all of those lines were nicely linear, the complexity gets rather logarithmic. So.
Yeah, we're not going to, thank you for the question, we're not going to continue going forever, although a lot of the parents at the preschool have been asking me about the high school, and send them to other people. I say, oh, talk to your board members, talk to Mr. Lamy. So that is a question I cannot answer, but definitely the idea would, oh, that is, see, I knew it would be.
I made one joke 2 years ago.
And then you're going to pay for that now, yes, for a long time. So So you can talk about the high school to that. Other than that, the idea will be that when we're fully grown, we will be at around 450. So, 2 classes per grade, that would be the goal. So we're not planning to go beyond that. I think it's very important to know that I think for a school, there are many good reasons why you need 2 classes per grade versus the 1 class per grade model. One is, financial sustainability. This is a much healthier model. And also I think for the students, you are going to need that mixing, so for 50s, it's a medium school actually. For independent schools in California that tend to be fairly small, if that's medium size. But I think it's going to be good for the students, to have that larger social pool that will really help them. Typically, we're going to try and start with like a slightly larger kindergarten classroom because sometimes also in the language immersion model, if you lose students, it's much harder to replace them. So when we get to 6th grade, we bring in new students, and actually there's some parents in the room here that have come and have a new student at Scuola that started in 5th or 6th grade. So those students will join later, and then we have an Italian acquisition track for those students. So there is Italian advance for the students that have been on Scuola all along, and then the step language acquisition track. So that's the desired size, unless we start at high school.
And ideally, you get to that 450 in how many years?
Probably about, let's see, now we're kind of 2-3 combined classes already there, so maybe like 6 years from now.
So how many students per grade would that be in each middle school grade?
So the middle school is structured slightly differently, and so there's smaller classes. They tend to be smaller classes, around 18.
I'm sorry, but for like how many 6th graders when you're fully built out, you'll have like.
So there will be like 2 classes of 18, but the way it works in middle school is very different because you divide them up in advisories, and so the advisories, they can be anything between 12 or 16 students. So depending on the subjects, it works differently than elementary. Have a great dinner.
It's our first date.
Since you brought it up, thinking in the long term, we are curious about what the high school options are, and I think there's only one IB high school in all of San Francisco.
Yeah, but one is serious, she's right. The second one is, well, they won't offer you as an alternative to AP. I was never conversation.
Yes. We're putting a lot of investment in the IB program, and so, I think there's maybe a need for continuing that.
Thank you. Did you want to add something, Richard? You came and Richard is our secretary. He's been very involved in the creation of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and you just actually come back after a sabbatical in Italy. So,
I was gone last year because, as Valentina said, I took my daughter to Italy for a year. So one of the things I can tell you, if anyone wants to do a similar experience, is that for my daughter, she started the preschool, and we left for her fourth grade. Is that there was not an issue with her entering into an Italian school for a year. So the language was not an issue. I will say, honestly, though, the issue was the pedagogy, because she was used to, we did not choose an IB school for many reasons, which I'll have to explain later. But she really did miss the IB and Reggio approach. So kind of to your point, or someone's point about the investment is the IB, our children are accustomed to learning in a certain way. And there is a certain joy with that. And she used to always say, we don't do science at this, Collegio San Luigi was the name of the school. We don't do science here. I said, what do you mean you don't do science? She goes, we just memorize. At the Scuola, we do experiments, and that's where we learn. And I thought that was very interesting. That she, at 10, she kind of was able to sort of draw that distinction. So, amen.
Review online.
It's recorded.
Just don't mention their name of that school in Bologna.
No, it had many wonderful qualities, but.
Can I add to that, Richard, just because I think, to your point about the quality of an IB education, a lot of people have asked me, I've kind of picked up life and moved from Hawaii because I believe that this is the type of school that our world actually really needs. And I say that kind of looking at the educators who are sitting in front of me with the strongest belief. IB is one thing and super strong all on its own, but when it's coupled with Reggio, the way that the first principle of the Reggio NYP program is going to shape it. What it looks like for high school or for a DP here, I'm not quite sure, but I know that your students are going to be successful in high school. What college is going to look like for our dog patch parents, I don't know that it's really going to be a thing, really, to the extent that it is right now. But I think that what really you experienced and stepped away from and came back to, we're growing really big people here. So I hope that you all feel really, really great about that.
Can you talk a little bit about how the tuition is benchmarked and what other schools are benchmarked against? And then also, what is the upper limit for tuition increases over the next couple of years? Because it has been a steady increase since we've been there.
So there is a group of California independent schools called Scuola, and Gerald's, all of them, and then Gerald's, all those schools submit their data about everything, but tuition is one of those pieces of data, and then Gerald whittles it down based on schools that are in San Francisco, like size, all of those sorts of things, so that we're really trying to compare apples to apples. And then we're unique because we have a preschool too, so kind of break that out as well. And then look at where we fall. As you know, most independent schools, preschool is one tuition, elementary K through 5 is another, and then middle school is a third tuition amounts. And so we look at all of those schools and use that as sort of creating the benchmark. I have to say, before we do that, we start with teacher salaries and everything. We don't just think like, wow, they're charging that, why don't we charge that too, and we'll fill in expenses. So we do look at that. So we do look at schools like Live Oak, Friends. We try to keep geographically French American, the same kinds of programs. It is a little bit challenging to do all of it. Some schools include their lunch program because everybody has to pay, some don't. And that's not huge, but the spread between these schools is not enormous, right? So the meal program is $1,200, some amount like that. The spread between these schools is not enormous, so it does have an effect on things. So I think sometimes parents say to us, but I compared it to this school. I said, yeah, but they're not serving the food and we charge that. It is a little convoluted. But we don't start from nowhere. We do take a list, we look at these schools. This begins about this time of year. So we start looking at our projected expenses for next year. Gerald submits all the information to CalSBOA and then starts getting all of that information. The goal is that we, as a board, vote on tuition amounts at our January meeting. We would love to move it up because I think it would be really helpful to parents to know in advance. But we have a problem with when we get all this information from CalSBOA as well. So we're kind of
which is why the majority of independent school publish at that time. It's just very hard to get all the data back and compile it. Within that group that Sarah mentioned, for the KA program, we are in the bottom half of the independent schools we compare to. So that's the comparison for now. And again, the biggest expense is supporting our teachers, which I mean this was mentioned before in the presentation, but I think I can stress enough how hard it has become to keep these wonderful people here and how difficult life in the Bay Area has become for them. And not just them, we know that the parents are facing as well. And on that note, the reason why tuition keeps going up to make sure that we can support them, we also want to make sure that slide scale tuition budget, the financial assistance budget also continue to go up so that those can afford, and we have some board members and actually one of them is not here tonight always say, well, if I actually can pay that tuition, I'm happy to pay that tuition and pay more, so that then that financial aid or tuition, slide scale tuition budget goes up, and that doesn't go with families that may need more time. So, thank you for the question.
And I think this is a good time to also mention that sliding scale means apply for the sliding scale tuition.
It's anything, so like this comes, grants, scholarships at a Scuola, or anything, from like full, covering full tuition, like students that pay $1,000 to, just a $2,000 discount. It's really, it's an application online and you put in all your data in there, your tax return, and it's really proportional to people's income. And there are many, many factors, it's very complicated, and Sonia can tell you more. Reach out to Sonia if you have any questions on that.
I just have a follow-up question. So this is often referenced when we talk about the tuition increases, creating a benchmark to other comparable schools. But it's not really a direct extrapolation, right? This is something that you use to get a feeling of how you can justify the tuition increase in a larger socioeconomic context, right? But it's not a direct extrapolation, correct?
You are correct. It is, if we were to think of what we thought tuition was and then compared it and our number was way off, we would be looking back at the comparable schools and saying, wait, we're doing something wrong here.
Right.
It is not, does not do correct.
Yeah. So I understand the interplay of the sliding scale tuition and also the sort of corollary of, so the parents who can afford more wind up paying more. But I just wanted to ask if there's been any reflection on the sort of phenomenon that it's creating, which is that parents who've been in the program for a long time have seen increases of 7, 8, 9%. This is the range over the years. And each time it's kind of been referenced as well, this is a one-time thing because of these circumstances, either a physical plant investment or a big staff up, and it probably won't continue. It'll probably go back to being more like 4, 4.5, but it's never gone back. And this has become the new normal.
They never go back to the percentage.
It's never dropped. It's, we're always having an 8 or, 7.5, 9, 9.5. Oh, I'm just saying since we joined the program. So it's created a totally different economic situation than when we started the program. When we were deciding on schools, we built a chart to predict our total expense, right? With a predictive increase, and there's no relationship at all, right? So the difference between a 4.5 or even 5% and an 8 or 8.5 or 9% increase compounded over, the entire time in the school program is enormous. Right? It's not 7, 8, or 9% compounded. So I'm just wondering if there's been any talk or reflection of the board that you can be effectively pricing out people who are already in the program. Now, you say, well, for the sliding scale tuition, yes. But I think there's also a phenomenon of families who are not, lower income or even middle income, but for whom that progression, the compounded progression, is still going to put the program out of sustainability.
So, first to talk about reflection, there is a lot of reflection about it. And it's not, we the board are also very conscious of making sure people like Dunia are part of that because she's the person who really hears from parents about the cost of tuition. So when Valentina and others are part of those discussions so that we're not just in the vacuum by ourselves. And those meetings are now, right now we're like every month these conversations, and we do look at past years and then comparing to going forward. And
the increases have gone down. So I think the increase you referred to, and we can add something to that one too, Claudia, is because we really started low with our KA tuition. So we were much smaller. We were much smaller, so we had less staff, less faculty, less positions, and so it was obviously like some board members in the past told us, oh, don't make a mistake, even if you're small, you should still charge whatever the other independent schools charge because you're going to get it. And, I can think of a board member that told me about it a long time ago.
He actually said no school ever went out of business for charging too much tuition. And he said, well,
yeah,
we feel like we're not offering what other schools are offering, right? And
So-
the first year that the K started, we were in a trailer.
Yeah.
So that's why we charged less, but that's why it's a comparably higher increase.
And I'm on the board of a school, actually, they say they have to do it like 19% increase 1 year because they realized that, if they didn't increase by that, this was just going to go on. So, it's always tricky, I think, when you start the school and you're kind of building up, out of your 8th grade, and you were then more stable, and now, we also have very sophisticated board, we have a 10-year model, so the finance committee, actually, Germany, to speak to that as well, has put together a model for the next 10 years, so we can also connect to the finance committee to talk about, the potential tuition increases that they're built in. But, we would never go above that number of our comparable schools, so that's why we use that. And we are not, again, we're not even at the median, we're second to the bottom of our 10 comparable independent schools. And again, most of the increases have been, to be honest, not related to our facilities, that we cover faculty. As the area continue to get more expensive. And we do understand, it's in the independent school world, what is the tuition conundrum? Because you don't want to outprice your parents, and then again, there's very many teachers left in the area, so that's the other growth that we want to make sure that we keep here. Because without teachers, there's no school, and without parents, there's no school. And so this is why the only thing we can do, I think, as a board, is to go to that sliding scale tuition to help, the families that are, getting to the point of being priced out. And again, sometimes it's really just a nice board of work that can, can help family that has budgeted, slightly less than what tuition is charged. But this is a board that is very thoughtful about that. I'm not saying it because they're in the room. And, they discuss it and they're,
and there's a lot of arguing about it.
Can I just add just two points to that? One is that, or 3 points really. One is that the board wants to support all the families that we can. So that's the first thing. The second is and please share this with all the other families here at Scuola. When families do apply for financial aid, there are 2 very important questions at the very end. One is, what can your family pay? That's the first thing for the following year. And there's you write in a number. And then the second is, please tell us about important experiences that the school needs to know about in sort of taking your application in context. So, I think the agency that provides the information to staff about how much each family should pay, it's really done with, sort of a thoughtful way. And everyone is trying to do their best to support families to remain here as tuition goes up. I just wanted to share that.
Do you want to add something to that?
No, I would just say that from Gerald's presentation, the bulk of the expenses of the school are for teacher salaries. And what the board really agonizes over these tuition increases. Most of us are parents, or a lot of us are parents, so we have to write the same checks that everybody else does. And the key thing is, we have to compete with all the other independent schools in San Francisco to get the best teachers. And you can't really, and then even with that, our tuition, we're not even in the top half, we're kind of the bottom 2 or 3. So I think the school's doing a pretty good job considering how we're expanding. We've got fantastic faculty. I'll put our faculty up against any other independent school in San Francisco. And our tuition's at the lower end. I think we're doing a good job on balance. But we do agonize over it, and we do understand if you're increasing 6, 7, 8% a year, those are big numbers off the base. We know it. But I think the way we deal with it in our minds is we have such a high percentage of the school on a relative basis has some form of aid, and people shouldn't look at aid as just for people that can't afford anything. It's like, if you're in a squeeze, you'll probably get some aid.
And unfortunately, for the same reason, other independent schools now, in Germany, you have the exact numbers, but they tend to raise by 5. These are established independent schools, they're going to 5.5, typical raise of tuition per year. And this has been in the last few years again because of the high cost of living that we have.
And also, want to clarify that tuition is separate from this, paying for this building. So paying for this new campus and for any work that's done on, in the dog patch, that's done through our campaign and through bank funds. That tuition is not going to pay for that. So I don't want anyone to think, wait, if you're starting construction next year, that means tuition is going up 20% because how else would you pay for it, right? It is totally separate, and that's part of the 10-year modeling that we've done to be sure that we can pay for the buildings without having to increase tuition and pay for it. Okay?
You want to add to that, Jeff?
The only other thing I would say is that, you know, our financial deal on these three buildings on this campus is very favorable. You know, we've got a very low base rent. Part of that reflects the fact that we have to put a lot of capital into these buildings to make it work. But having said that, we've got a very low base rent. Any square footage we add, we're going to increase the square footage of this campus probably by 30 or 40%. We don't pay an additional nickel for any square footage we add. So we've got a very favorable deal on real estate here, and that will help us keep our costs down. And if you look at our 10-year model, when we move from Fell Street, so we just have the two campuses, Dog Patch and the Mission, our costs go down. So it's a little bit rougher right now because we're paying rent on Fell Street plus rent on this campus. But that will decrease in a couple of years when we move on Fell Street.
How much longer is the lease on Bell Street? How many more years?
Yeah, so we're with the be there in 2024. It's a 10-year lease, and then we're expecting to be out of there before the end of the lease. And something doesn't go to plan. I mean, the plan now is conservative, so we may be sooner if we're lucky. And again, it depends on the fundraising. I mean, if the fundraising is spectacular, we could potentially do all three buildings now.
And the city of San Francisco.
And the city of
San Francisco. That might be even more.
Yeah, the beauty of this approach, the phased approach, is that we can actually just move into these three buildings as we raise the funds and potentially borrow some money and then start doing them one by one. The city is it's going well so far, so but you never know.
But it gives us certainty that
Yeah.
we have three campuses, so the kids are not going to be in a situation where we don't know when you're going.
Yeah, there are there's so many schools out there now, because now they ordinance that the city of San Francisco issued 3 years ago about the size of the fitting, has made a number of Catholic schools closed, and there are many schools that are looking for space. It's really, I get a call a week on can be rent from us downstairs, so.
There's an independent school that had to vacate in the middle of the school year.
Yes.
Near us.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do anything about it. Legally, they couldn't be in that building, and they couldn't find another building, and so we're happy to have real estate.
So just like we were doing in Fast Street on renting, also again, this is we're very mindful of school finances, and when we did our campaign feasibility study, the consultants that we used said that they have never ever encountered a school that has made it this far without already doing a capital campaign. So you couldn't understand how we survived this long capital campaign. And so at Fast Street we were going to do the old school, and downstairs we have another school that we're hosting this year, so we're trying to do that conservative. And if we could build that building next year and move some students in there, and it's like I got these schools that told me they would pay any price. Any price for that. Because they're much more established independent schools, and they need to renovate, they need to go out, and they're desperate. Should we ask?
We'll stay a little bit.
Yes, we let anybody that has to go. And thank you so much for staying. If you have more questions.